Let's take a vote on the consent calendar, and then we'll have our first author. Okay.
DeBobne?
Aye.
DeBobne, aye. Allen? Aye. Allen, aye. Sajian? Brown?
Aye.
Brown, aye. Chow? Aye. Chow, aye. Gatto? Aye. Gatto, aye. Hadley? Kim? Aye. Kim, aye. Lowe? Aye. Lowe, aye. Perea? Aye. Perea, aye. Ridley Thomas? Aye. Ridley Thomas, aye. Stone? Aye. Stone, aye.
Okay, consent calendar's out. Mr. Mendoza, SB 300.
Mr. Chair, members, how are you? Thank you for allowing me to present. I'm sneaking out of the Senate floor session to come out and present my bill.
Thank you.
I'm here to present SB 300, which removes a competitive disadvantage for California pawnbrokers so that they can compete with the growing trend towards online pawnbroking lending. Unlike out-of-state pawnbrokers conducting online business inside of California, California-based pawnbrokers providing loans must obtain the thumbprint of the person pledging property as collateral for the loan. SB 300 allows California-based pawnbrokers to conduct electronic pawnbroker transaction by replacing the thumbprint requirement with a new requirement that loans must be transferred into the bank account of the consumer requesting the loan. With that, Mr. Chair, would welcome any questions.
Okay. Do we have any witnesses in support?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members, Bill Duplessis representing the California Pawnbrokers Association. Some of you will remember last year the California Pawnbrokers sponsored ACR 101 by Reggie Jones Sawyer, which was essentially an opportunity for the stakeholders to come together and for the legislature to become aware of the fact that California pawnbrokers, unlike pawnbrokers from out of state, are prohibited by the requirement of that thumbprint from doing internet pawn. Now, of course, someone of my age would just assume the internet went away, but the likelihood of that happening is quite remote. And the tremendous competitive disadvantage that the California pawnbrokers have now will only get worse as the demographic changes and our market becomes more computer savvy and more internet friendly, and candidly the whole internet commerce is exploding, and there's no indication that it has any intention of slowing down. I did want to address, and perhaps I should wait until after the opposition has spoken, I wanted to address the opposition directly. Mr. Chairman, what would your pleasure be on that? Should I?
Why don't we hear from other witnesses in support, and we'll give you a chance to address it after
Very
those
good.
comments are made.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michelle Anapolsky, and I own California Loan and Jewelry here in downtown Sacramento. The business was started over 100 years ago by my great-grandfather, and the last 40 years has been run by my father and my uncle. And unfortunately, a year and a half ago, my father passed away to pancreatic cancer, leaving my uncle and I to run the business. And our business over the last couple of years has continued to decline. The foot traffic is down, causing a 50% decline in sales over the last year and nearly a 15% drop in our loan portfolio. And I, being a little bit younger than Mr. Duplessis, am a fan of the internet, and I feel that it is here to stay. And, you know, we are so close to the Silicon Valley here in Sacramento, and Silicon Valley is the mecca of technology, and we should be able to compete in the game and be able to do electronic transactions. I feel like for the future of my business, it's so important to be able to stay competitive and stay ahead of the game. And my plan is to continue to run this business for another 30 years and keep it in Sacramento and keep it going. And I know that this is imperative to my business, that we are able to do electronic transactions.
Any other?
No, I if you don't mind, I'd like to comment after opposition is presented.
Okay. Any other supporters?
No.
Witnesses in opposition?
John, stay still. Michelle, you can go.
I shouldn't be making fun of Mr. Duplessis' age. I have fond memories of horse and buggies. Mr. Chairman, Tom Sheehy representing the California Police Chiefs Association today. Regretfully, we're in opposition to Mr. Mendoza's SB 300. Unfortunately, by allowing for electronic transactions, SB 300 is going to remove the requirement for individuals to make a thumbprint available in connection with the item that they're pawning. Instead, what SB 300 would do is require a pawnbroker who's issued an electronic loan to electronically have those funds deposited, those proceeds deposited into a bank account in the name of a pledger. However, SB 300 does not require the pawnbroker to report the pledger's account credentials to law enforcement. This is a major gap in the bill that must be filled. Under SB 300, a law enforcement officer or detective investigating stolen property is going to be required to get a search warrant in order to identify the person who is the actual owner of that bank account, who may or may not be the person that actually pledged the material. Now, beyond that, there's been some discussion, and you may hear from the sponsors of this bill that they don't think that fingerprints are important in today's law enforcement investigations. I'm here to tell you on behalf of the Police Chiefs Association that that's just not true at all. In fact, a very quick check that any one of you here could do on the internet right at this moment, if you've got, one of these devices on you, if you go to www.leadsonline, you'll find the leading site on the internet that provides leads to law enforcement across the United States. Just a quick 15-minute check this morning or I should say this afternoon before I walked in here, showed me numerous examples, including one that was just solved yesterday, a $14,000 necklace through Leads Online, and oftentimes exactly what they're using is a fingerprint. And I'm sure the sponsors must be familiar with Leads Online because the National Pawnbrokers Association is one of their main supporters, and they're in full support of using fingerprints in investigations. Now, I don't know definitively because I didn't have time to check, but I believe that the California Pawnbrokers Association is also a contributor and supporter of Leads Online. So if they think that fingerprints are a good thing, on the one hand, they can't just come in your committee and tell you that fingerprints don't matter because then they're on both sides of the same issue, and it's one or the other. So property crimes are hard enough to solve in the state as it is. Law enforcement resources are thin, and by eliminating the fingerprint requirement, essentially what you're going to do is you're going to make it easier to get stolen material fenced. And that will be the unintended consequence of SB 300. And for those reasons, I would respectfully ask for you to lay off this bill today so that we can fix it and get it in shape where it could actually move forward and get signed.
John, Mr. Chairman,
Before we do that, do we have any other opposition?
John,
If the witnesses of support would like to address those concerns.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Webster. I'm the essentially the general counsel for the California Pawnbrokers Association. I would like to correct the record, if I could, in a couple different aspects. Number one, the requirement for the fingerprint has been around probably longer than I've been alive, which is now getting to be in double digits here, double nickels. And the problem is that if it was so valuable for law enforcement, then the Department of Justice certainly would have adopted a standard through its administrative proceedings that defined what is a usable fingerprint. It has never once done that. There is no standard for a fingerprint. So it's kind of a requirement that's very illusory, to say the least. I've also participated in trials, criminal trials, where the thumbprint was an issue. And unfortunately, the California Department of Justice has never been able to articulate what it is that makes a thumbprint off of a pawn slip usable. In lieu of that rather nebulous information, what we came up with was the requirement, and mind you that this is a contract, so under the California Uniform Electronic Transactions Act, the businesses all have to have an enforceable agreement. So they are very interested in making certain that the person that they're dealing with is in fact the person who is authorized to pledge the property. As a consequence, the SB 300 basically parallels the California Uniform Electronic Transaction Act. And in terms of, yes, there is definitely a need for a search warrant, and I think all of us would want that. And the reason for that is you are dealing with a financial transaction, just like using your Visa card. And you don't want to have that information out under the California Financial Privacy Information Act or the Gramm-Leach, the federal equivalent, which is the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. Certainly, the minimus amount of time that it would take to get a search warrant, I think, would be essentially beneficial for all parties concerned. Thank you. Mr.
Would you like
Chairman, may I
to respond to that?
I just want to clarify the record. It's not de minimis. And for the witness here who's not a member of law enforcement, as far as I know, to sit here and tell you that it's easy to get a search warrant under any circumstances is troubling. It is an extra step that has to be gone through, and it is not a de minimis effort, not by any means. It's a significant barrier. Look, the problem with the depositing the loan proceeds into a bank account, it sounds like a great idea. 30 years ago, when we were out of the horse and buggy age, when I got my first a bank account, I had to walk into a bank, produce ID, and go through the whole 9 yards. They knew they were dealing with me. Nowadays, you can very easily through HSB or other online banks, you can get an online bank account set up in minutes. And I can assure you that that is a prime opportunity for fraud to be committed. It's easy to get an online banking account, okay? And they're not really verifying your ID. So I don't see anything in this bill that would prohibit that from that type of a bank account from being established and having the loan proceeds go into that. I mean, my client is sympathetic with the industry trends, although I know that the feeling in the industry in California is not unanimous on this issue. But my client is sympathetic to their trends about wanting to modernize and to compete. But the thing is we don't want to make it more easy for folks to sell stolen goods. And that, unfortunately, a lot of times in legislation, there's unintended consequences. And that is an unintended consequence of this legislation. There's just no two ways about it. Check Leads Online, and you'll see how important fingerprints are in solving crimes. And I remind you, the pawn industry is one of the main supporters of Leads Online. So they apparently agree with that assertion.
Good questions from my colleagues?
Yes, Mr. Chair, may I? If the buyer or the seller out of state, we have no control, do we, as far as fingerprints go?
I'm sorry.
If the buyer or the seller to the pawn industry is out of state via the internet, is that that's a possibility of transaction? But where would the fingerprints come into the picture?
So I'm not an expert on out-of-state pawn transactions. Maybe the author or the sponsor of the bill can address that question, Mr. Asajian.
The reason I'm questioning that, I don't think that's an issue, and that creates maybe unfair competition for those doing business in California.
Well, if the primary objective of this committee is to make sure that they're on an even playing field with out-of-state competitors, that's fine. Why not have them go see a notary and get a notarized fingerprint? Digitized, it becomes part of the package. That is not that. If you want to say that getting a search warrant is de minimis, well, then I'll assert that getting a notarized fingerprint is de minimis. Why not do that? That solves the problem. Boom, take that amendment today. We'll remove our opposition.
Ms. Brown?
I'm coming into that age that we've been talking about. And one of the things that I did was put my thumbprint or my index fingerprint on this. Is there any reason why, if the thumbprint is the biggest issue, is there any reason why that can't be done by remotely by your telephone?
Well, she was looking at me. May I respond first, Mr. Chairman? Ms. Brown, thank you. It's a great question. I don't believe that I'm the most authoritative source to answer it, but I will tell you that if this bill were to be slowed down and we could actually have a more thorough discussion about the fingerprint requirement and how valuable it is to law enforcement, I'm sure we could find several different ways to satisfy the fingerprint requirement, perhaps even with technology like you've suggested.
Ms. Brown, I wanted to respond to that. We would, of course, and let me back up and give you a little history. I don't think we've ever been on the opposite side of Cal Chiefs that I can recall in any pawnbroker bill, and it's uncomfortable, certainly, for us to be there because we're very big supporters of law enforcement. The reason that you can't use, for instance, an iPad or iPhone thumbprint and have it transmitted is there's no way to connect. If Mr. Mendoza were to do that, Senator Mendoza were to do that, there would be no assurance that it's not my thumbprint over there leaning onto his iPhone. And the technology does not exist to link, for instance, even in our computerized reporting system to DOJ. There's no way to link on the current JOS 123 form with that thumbprint. Now, we did a one-year bill last year asking for input and a stakeholders meeting to discuss alternatives to the thumbprint. We held that meeting on the second day of December in this very room, and present were Cal Chiefs, California District Attorneys, And we discussed this as an option. We discussed it as an alternative. And it was what we came up with. Cal Chiefs didn't happen to be at that meeting. But we're all grappling with this thing, and obviously we have a long-standing history of being very supportive of whatever law enforcement wants to do. But there is no technological link to link that pawn transaction with an electronically generated thumbprint, and unless there's technology that I don't know about. Yeah. So,
I have a quick question. Then we'll go to Mr. Allen and then Mr. Lowe. We have a number of other states that have already done this. Obviously, this is causing a competitive disadvantage for California. That's very clear. We have states like Colorado, Florida, Texas, New York, Georgia, New Hampshire, Hawaii, and Arizona. Have we seen any data presented that there's been an increase in stolen merchandise that have been put forward in those states? And do any of those states require a fingerprint to be able to transact on an online pawn deal?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you guys have any from the police?
I don't have all the latest statistics on the other states and the types of problems they are having, but I know that Leads Online is a website that's used nationally, and again, you'll see that fingerprints are a very important component to solving property crimes. Yeah. And again, you'll see that the National Pawn Association is one of the significant sponsors of that website. So
I think that's obviously understood, and I think that would be agreed upon. But do we know if any of those states have set precedent by requiring a fingerprint for the transaction, or if any of those states have rethought the bill because of a huge influx of stolen merchandise?
I'm happy to do some research on that, Mr. Chairman, and get back to the committee. I don't want to give a answer that's not completely thorough on the point.
That's fair. I appreciate that.
May I have Jan Schneider, the legislative chair for the pawnbrokers, comment on Leads Online, because I don't believe they actually take.
Please, if you can keep it under a minute, though.
Yes, Jan Schneider, R&J Jewelry and Loan, San Jose, California, and legislative chair for California Pawnbrokers Association. I just have to correct the statement that Leads Online collects fingerprints or thumbprints, because they do not. They do not accept them. They don't get them on their reports. They don't have any prints that go to Leads Online.
We will have.
I'm sorry, I never made the statement that Leads Online collects fingerprints. So that's fine to correct the record, but I never said that they do.
We appreciate that. Let's go to Vice Chair Mr. Allen.
Thank you very much. A question for the author of the bill and the witness, if you so choose. Is there, I understand the number of other states do this right now without fingerprints, and we don't have any data at the moment to support whether or not they have an increase in stolen merchandise. The question is I think it's a valid one. There's a lot of transactions that go on these days on the internet. I think it's great to see all the commerce. Tracking this stuff does potentially become an issue. Is there any sort of thought into if there is a way to get fingerprints into the transaction? Have you explored this at all, or is that simply something that will never be a part of this bill?
Well, at this point, there is no technology that could actually allow us to do that, because if you're at home on your own computer, there's no way of saying your thumbprint over the online loan that they're trying to get, or the transaction you're trying to do over the internet. And that's what we chose to do it in their checking account or their bank account, because we know that bank will have some sort of trace, whether it be their fingerprint, whether it be their identity. Everything will be in that bank. So when the money goes there, we know who it's going to go, and they have to go and use their ID to take the money out or get it out themselves. So we feel very confident about that. And just keep in mind, California pawnbrokers are at a disadvantage. Other states are providing loans in here, providing transactions into our state in and out. People from the outside, free and clear. Our pawnbrokers cannot do that. We still have to use a thumbprint, which puts us at a disadvantage. So I think it's time for us to kind of get beyond that and say, look, we're by allowing us to put it into their bank account, we are fulfilling that requirement. That's what this bill does. And in reality, by other people from other states and our own residents using California pawnbrokers, we have one of the almost overregulated industries than any other state. So we're actually affording these consumers actually more protections than they would in another state. So if you look at it that way, we'll
go to Mr. Lowe. Mr. Lowe.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. A question of our representative from police chiefs.
Yes, Mr. Lowe.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the insight on the importance of the fingerprints in terms of theft, properties, etc. Would you apply the similar type of philosophy towards for example, the similar industries of the internet economy, eBay, Craigslist, any other opportunity. Similarly, in terms of sort of identifying and trying to capture the similar type of criminal activity that you've sort of addressed?
So that's an entirely different type of transaction and market.
Sure.
And I'm not sure that, I'm in a position today to give you testimony that'll help shed a lot of light on that, Mr. Lowe. It's a good question. I think it's a fair question, and it's one that we would certainly be willing to take a look at and get back to you with some information on. But I don't want to, in a public hearing like this, I don't want to give you information that's half thought out. Okay. So I'm not sure I can give you a good answer on that today, but be happy to follow up with the committee under separate cover.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Kim.
I believe the question has been already addressed, but I do want to retouch on the police association's opposition or concern, I must say, regarding the fingerprinting issue. Mr. Sheehy, could you provide us with some information or evidence, if there is any, about that exists, that fingerprint record has been critical to criminal prosecutions?
Right. Thank you for asking. So I just pulled up this article that was just put on Leads Online 10 days ago, okay, and they talk about a $14,000 necklace that was recovered as a result of using fingerprints. If you go through here into the news and articles notification section of this website that I keep talking, by the way, I don't own stock in them. I don't even know if they're for profit, so it's not an advertisement. It's not a commercial. But there are numerous examples of fingerprints being used to solve crimes in California and around the country. And again, this is widely known. The pawn industry supports this website, which is why I used it as an example, because for them to come in here and say the fingerprints aren't important puts them on two sides of the same issue. They've made it clear that fingerprints are important. So there are many, many examples. This is one I just pulled up right here. It's on their website right now. You can check it out.
Senator Mendoza, would you like to close?
Can I address one thing first?
Senator Cannon is closing it. We do have a number of other bills up today, and I think that the points have been made today.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, thank you for the time to present this bill. As you can clearly see that the pawnbrokers are in a situation where they're not competing fairly with other pawnbrokers from other states. Our pawnbrokers follow the rules and the regulations of our state. They are one of the most overly regulated industries in our state and providing a lot of safeguards to consumers within our state, and by them to allow them the opportunity to provide these transactions without the thumbprint and actually allowing them to send those monies to the individual's bank accounts will not only allow outside customers but also online customers to have the same protections that current Californians have with our industry. So with that, Mr. Chair, members, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Mendoza, thank you. I would just like to highlight Mr. Lowe's point with all the numerous websites already selling merchandise directly from one party to the next. It seems like that there's definitely not only a competitive disadvantage, but it seems like there's an argument to be made that this would still be a less likely place for people to sell and try to pawn the stolen merchandise. If this was the only game in town, I could see why this would be a great concern. I will urge the author to continue to work with the opposition to try to find common ground where possible. But clearly, if someone has stolen merchandise, there are a number of places where they can already sell this online with far less safeguards and far less of regulations to protect consumers and obviously protect those that are victims of stolen property than pawnbrokers and the websites, and allowing them to do this online here in the state seems to make them more competitive. So with that, I will ask for a roll call.
Motion is due pass to appropriations. DeBobney?
Aye.
DeBobney, aye. Allen? Aye. Allen, aye. Sajian? Aye. Sajian, aye. Brown? Aye. Brown, aye. Chow? Aye. Chow, aye. Gatto? Aye. Gatto, aye. Hadley? Aye. Hadley, aye. Kim? Aye. Kim, aye. Lowe? Aye. Lowe, aye. Perea? Aye. Perea, aye. Ridley Thomas? Aye. Ridley Thomas, aye. Stone? Aye. Stone, aye.
Bill is out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Block, with that, I will note that item number 2, AB 235, has been pulled at the request of the author for some additional work. We look forward to seeing that in the near future. We'll tell the sergeant. The sergeant will get it.
Make him sit down and come back.
It's okay. Mr. Block, SB 197?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me begin by accepting the amendments that were recommended in your committee analysis, and thank your committee for very positive ideas. Many constituents who own small businesses in my district will come to my office, and when I talk to them about what problems they're having in their small businesses, they'll tell me it's a lack of available capital. You've probably heard the same kind of complaints in your districts. According to most small business leaders, the most efficient way for small business people to hear about loans is through referrals, person-to-person referrals. Currently, a licensed finance lender is prohibited from paying compensation to an unlicensed person or company for soliciting and accepting applications for loans. SB 197 will authorize licensed finance lenders who make responsible commercial loans to pay a referral fee to those from whom they receive business. This will help California commercial lenders get the word out to small business borrowers about their financially sound loans and help California small business owners hear about these loans and sustain and grow their businesses. SB 197 is co-sponsored by the Opportunity Fund and the California Association of Micro Enterprise Opportunity. It's also supported by 24 other organizations, including Small Business California, National Federation of Independent Business, California Asian Pacific Chamber of Commerce, California Black Chamber of Commerce, California Disabled Veterans Business Alliance, and others. I have representatives here from the bill's co-sponsors to testify in support and answer any questions committee members might have.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I will ask the supporters of the bill to be brief in the essence of time, as we are have a number of bills to go through, and because there's no opposition on file today. But thank you.
Absolutely. Good afternoon. My name is Gwendy Brown, and I am Vice President of Research and Policy at Opportunity Fund. Opportunity Fund is California's largest nonprofit microlender to small businesses. We are co-sponsoring SB 197 to level the playing field and make it possible for responsible California business lenders to pay referral fees to people who send us qualified loan applicants. Existing California law is hurting small businesses because it limits licensed lenders' ability to market their loan products to businesses who could benefit from them. The more choices small businesses have, the better off they are. This bill would allow us to better inform them of their choices. We hope you will support SB 197. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman DeBobne, Vice Chairman Allen. I'm members of the Banking and Finance Committee. My name is Heidi Pickman from the California Association for Micro Enterprise Opportunity. Cameo is the statewide network of 85 nonprofit business organizations that provide business assistance and microloans to 20,000 very small and startup businesses in diverse communities. We're the de facto CDFI coalition for microlenders in California with 23 CDFI members. We are co-sponsoring SB 197 for all the reasons described by my colleague, and we ask for your support in the bill. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any other witnesses in support?
Yolanda Benson, representing the California Asian Pacific Chamber of Commerce, representing over 600,000 API businesses in California, as well as the National Federation of Independent Business on behalf of them today in support of the bill.
Any other witnesses in opposition? Questions from my colleagues? Mr. Chair, would you like to give a closing remark?
Just ask for your aye vote.
Let's take a roll call.
DeBobne?
Aye.
DeBobne, aye. Allen?
Aye.
Allen, aye. Sajian? Sajian, aye. Brown? Aye. Brown, aye. Chow? Aye. Chow, aye. Gatto? Gatto, aye. Hadley? Aye. Hadley, aye. Kim? Aye. Kim, aye. Lowe?
Aye.
Lowe, aye. Perea? Aye. Perea, aye. Ridley Thomas? Aye. Ridley Thomas, aye. Stone? Aye. Stone, aye.
The bill's out. Congratulations. Chairman Block, would you like to do SB 285 next?
I would, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much. We're back to the pawnbroker industry now.
It's like you never left.
But this is a much less controversial bill. And I'll be very brief since the bill's already been moved and seconded. What SB 285 does, it increases rates and fees that California pawnbrokers may charge on pawn loans up to $2,500. These are minor, very minor changes, but they'll allow pawnbrokers to stay in business in California. What will happen with these small changes is the fees that pawnbrokers can charge will go from the 48th in the state, so the second lowest in the country rather, to 47th, so the third lowest in the country. Still very, very low fees, but enough, we think, to, again, allow California's fine pawnbroker industry to stay in business. Bill Duplessis here. on behalf of the bill to testify and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members. Bill Duplessis, representing the California Pawnbrokers Association. I'm trying to scan the room here to see if any of you were serving 5 years ago, but this is something that happens. There we go. Okay. Every 5 years, the California pawnbroker industry comes with hat in hand to the legislature. We negotiate with consumers groups the year prior to the bill's introduction, and we ask for a very modest increase in interest and fees. Thank you.
Any other witnesses in support?
I don't think you need to hear.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Chris Rosa, representing the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, in support.
Great. Anyone in opposition? Questions from my colleagues?
Very simple. Just for curiosity, since I wasn't here 5 years ago, I know pawnbrokers industry is probably the most, or one of the most regulated industry, and I understand the fee increase we're talking about is it's entirely between the private sector transactions. But I just want to know, what is the necessity of bringing this bill forward?
Well, Assembly Member, our rates and fees are set by the legislature. We have the inability to react to any changing market conditions, any increased costs. So we have to actually guess, which is really what it is, guess where we're going to be 5 years from now, where we're going to be next year. Things, for instance, things that go through on this very legislature, a minimum wage increase, high property values in downtown San Francisco or downtown San Jose or wherever, which is where most of our stores are in urban areas. So the unfortunate reality is when we get the increase, we're fine, and we start working backwards as far as not being fine for 4 years after that. Because, again, we don't have the ability to adjust our selling price or the price of our money as any other lender would, because we are regulated, as you pointed out. So that's why it's necessary.
Mr. Chairman, I want to applaud you for the work on this bill. I also would like to be added as a co-author. I will tell you that the more I've met with this industry, and I've gone to a number of the local pawnbrokers in my district, including Trader, Loan and Jewelry, and you meet with the people that are relying on this as not only a financial institution in tough times, but also as a place of commerce. We need to make sure we're supporting this industry. The jobs they're providing for our communities, the tax revenue they're providing for our local needs. This is a very reasonable approach. This is obviously a very modest increase, but I think it will make a difference for those small business people in our cities that consider this a profession. So with that, I'll ask for a roll call.
Motion is due pass to appropriations. DeBobney?
Aye.
DeBobney, aye. Allen? Aye. Allen, aye. Sajian? Aye. Sajian, aye. Brown?
Aye, and I'd like to be added as a co-author.
Brown, aye. Chow? Aye. Chow, aye. Gatto? Aye. Gatto, aye. Hadley?
Aye.
Hadley, aye. Kim? Aye. Kim, aye. Lowe? Aye. Lowe, aye. Perea? Aye. Perea, aye. Ridley Thomas? Aye. Ridley Thomas, aye. Stone? Aye. Stone, aye.
That moves on to appropriations. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Before we bring up Senator Morrell for SB
Yes, sir.
647, I just want to say that on SB 300, we were incorrect. The motion is not due pass to appropriations. It's due pass to privacy and consumer protection, where Chairman Gatto will get to take a look at it.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. I respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, thank you. We will take a roll call.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Do you accept the amendments at hand?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Okay.
will you give us at least a 30-second review of the bill?
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone else supporting?
Mr. Mr. Chair and members, Mike Belote for the California Mortgage Association. The bill deals with so-called hard money lending, which has been controversial. As a matter of fact, this bill makes some targeted clarifications to a bill passed a couple of years ago that resulted from some problems in hard money. This has nothing to do with consumer protection. We've worked it out with the Bureau of Real Estate and the Department of Business Oversight. Cleans up some reporting requirements, and we would ask for your aye vote.
Anyone in opposition? Any questions from my colleagues? So we have a acceptance of the motion with amendments. Okay, let's do a roll call.
She asked me if I need to close. I don't need to close. Thank you very much.
With the amendments taken, let's call for roll call.
Do pass as amended to appropriations. DeBobney?
Aye.
DeBobney, aye. Allen?
Aye.
Allen, aye. Sajian? Aye. Sajian, aye. Brown? Aye. Brown, aye. Chow? Aye. Chow, aye. Gatto? Aye. Gatto, aye. Hadley? Aye. Hadley, aye. Kim? Aye. Kim, aye. Lowe? Aye. Lowe, aye. Prea? Aye. Prea, aye. Ridley Thomas? Aye. Ridley Thomas, aye. Stone? Aye. Stone, aye.
Okay. So that moves on. We'll lift the call on the consent calendar if anyone wants to add on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Consent calendar SB 351. Asajian? Aye. Sajian, aye. Hadley? Aye. Hadley, aye.
And with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.